So now that we've created our frequency distribution table and have all this information, we're going to go through and create our histogram. So there's still going to be bars. The bars are going to be touching. That's why we created those class boundaries. So we're going to have a vertical axis and again a horizontal axis. So my vertical axis is always going to be the frequency. And then my horizontal axis will be based off of sort of the data. So it was talking about the monthly rent, right, for 24 statistics students. So the monthly rent, right, in dollars. All right. So if I think of my frequency, the highest frequency, right, was 8. So maybe I'll go by 2s here. So I have 2, 4, 6, 8, right, and 10. And then my horizontal axis, that monthly rent, that's going to have to do, we usually either label it with class boundaries or midpoints. So it's totally up to you, just sort of depends. I like to label mine with midpoints. So what I actually do first is I create the little bar and then I'll label my midpoints. I just find that I can create more symmetric bars if I go that route. So 507 is going to be my first midpoint. So I'm going to, let's see, the frequency is 4. So I'm going to start and create a bar, 4, and say right in the middle there would be 507. Or you could do and label it as 349.5 for the lower and then 664.5 for the upper. Totally up to you. The next piece would be a frequency of 8, right, the next class. So I'm going to actually continue to extend, because again, the bar should always be touching. And this is 822. My next class is a frequency of 5. You should again be the same width roughly, 1137. Then I have a frequency of 6. So that would be 1452. So the next two, right, so I'm just sort of, I like to sort of draw sort of the line here on here. So I have, right, 1767 and then another 0 of 2082. And then I have a frequency of 1. So 2397 would be that one labeled there. So I've labeled my distribution, and then the last thing would be just to give it a title. So it could be like the monthly rent paid by students. Monthly rent paid by students. So it gives me a visual representation of, right, the monthly rent students pay. So, right, it seems most students pay, right, between, $822, right, that's the highest, right, 507 to 1452, and then there's that, one person that pays, right, that rough, right, the midpoint, so 2,397. And I'll talk a little bit about what type of data piece that is a little bit later in this class. But that would be my histogram. So one other piece of information that we can use is the cumulative frequency. So it says if you want to know what percent of the data falls below a certain class boundary, then this would be a cumulative relative frequency. For cumulative frequencies, you are finding how many data values fall below the upper class limit. So you'll see that I actually have the class limits and frequency from the previous page above. And we're going to find the cumulative frequency. So we take anything from the previous upper class limits. So for starting frequency, the first class only has a frequency of 4. So my cumulative frequency would be 4. For my second class, we take its frequency, right, its frequency and anything above it. So we take the 8 plus 4, and so my cumulative frequency would be 12. For my third class, right, we would take anything from so I'd take the 5 from that and anything from above. So 5 plus the 12, right, which we get from the 4 and the 8. So I'm going to get 17. And then I have the 6 plus everything from above, right? And so I'd end up with 23. I take that class, the next class, 0, right, from everything from above, so I still have 23. And the same thing with the 6th class, 0 from that frequency plus everything from above. And then 1 plus what I have from above, so I end up with the 24. So if I think sort of what my answers are, right, it's the 4, 12, 7, it's all of these. I just sort of showed my work so you can know how I found these. But, right, the last piece, right, the last cumulative frequency in the last class should always equal your sample size, or if it's a population, however many people total, your total number of individuals. So sometimes this is little n or it could be big N, depending on if it's from a population or a sample. So that would be my cumulative frequency.